welcome to the Triple Takeover Toycast, a fortnightly podcast all about Transformers and, yes, occasionally other vintage toy lines as well. Or just other toy lines in general, really, as we're going to find out tonight, because we've got a wonderful guest with us, haven't we? This is Brian Parrish from Hasbro, who's going to be joining us shortly. And fair to say, we're pretty excited about this one, isn't it, gents?
I would say so.
Yeah. What's your name? Sorry.
Well, my name is Sixo. More on that later.
Oh, excellent. And who's the other guy over there? What's his name?
J Swags.
Me.
Jason.
Hi. Hello, I'm Jason.
That's
Hi.
Jason.
Yeah.
Did you want introducing? Did you?
We were
Liam?
just
Was
getting
that
too
what-
excited about
please.
Brian, weren't you, Sixo?
You know.
That's what it was.
Yeah,
you know?
I was exactly it. I was
It's
excited
exciting.
about our
It'd be
guest.
nice if people knew who we were.
Yeah. And who are you, Liam?
Liam, this is episode 94, mate. This is 94. People know who you are by now, but if you really want me to introduce you, then this is Toybox Soapbox. Anywhere there's an app.
Also known as Liam. Yeah. Hello. How you doing?
I'm all right, mate. Yeah, I'm good.
Thanks.
Yeah, excellent. Do you feel better now?
Asking for one thing, Jason. One thing.
Just a
One
bit of
thing.
notoriety. That's it, you know.
Yeah.
Plus all the other things, but we'll talk about them later.
I was going to say, is it just the one thing?
I know exactly.
Yeah, as if it's
Yeah.
just one thing.
But it is all about Brian tonight.
It is all about Brian. You're very welcome to do these intros, Liam. You know.
Well, maybe I will. Don't make me
Oh,
frightened.
he shouldn't have
to do
said
one.
that. He's going to be silent next
Yeah.
time. That's going to be it. He's like, on you go. That'll be it.
Yeah.
I'm equally trepidatious about what I'm letting myself in for if Liam does do the
Yeah,
intros.
let's see what
That's the
happens.
thing.
Yeah.
Just like the old days.
Yeah. The pun to word ratio is going to
Yeah,
be
exactly.
off the Richter.
Half an hour later,
Yeah.
the episode starts.
Exactly. But yes, tonight is all about Brian. Now, it's worth just saying before we bring Brian in, you know, who this guy is, because unlike Mark and Evan and some of the other Hasbro designers, it's fair to say that Brian isn't as well known, perhaps, I think, when it comes to kind of online fandom and what have you. But he's got an incredible resume with Hasbro. I mean, he has been working at Hasbro for, I think, about 25 years, but now works on all of what they consider to be their kid lines. So everything including like Earthspark and a lot of the kind of current movie lines like Rise of the Beast and Transformers 1.
Yeah.
Does a lot or all of the collaborative projects as well. So that is incredible in itself. Everything from like Agent Knight that's just come out to like the Transformers G.I. Joe stuff and whatever else. But he's even worked on Transformers sort of since back in the day with like Universe 2003 and things like this. So fair to say we've got quite a lot of questions, I think.
Oh,
It's,
so many. I can't
yeah.
wait for this one. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
This guy used to work at Kenner and places, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's worked on big brands, and like you said, he's not known in the fandom. So this is quite exciting. Good to see where it goes, actually, and see
Yeah.
what we can find out from him.
This is
Yeah.
it, yeah. Can't wait to see what we're going to get out of him. But obviously, before all that, it is just worth mentioning that we are sponsored tonight, as ever, by tfsource.com. So do go and check them out for all your Transformers and third-party needs. And if you want to get more like tonight, then get on our Patreon as well. That's patreon.com/Triple Takeover. And we'll do a little bit of a segment on that after we've chatted with Brian. So unless, Liam, you've got anything else that you want me to say, I think we'll go on over.
I do, but more on that later. So
Very nice. I see what you did there.
Cue Brian.
Yeah, let's bring in Brian, I think, on that. Right, well, we're here with Brian from Hasbro. So, Brian, as I know I just said to you, but obviously we're going to kind of do it officially on the pod now. So a huge thank you for your time and, you know, being here with us today as well. I was going to say this evening, but of course it's probably not this evening for you, is it?
It's close
late
enough.
Yeah, getting that way. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, we are super appreciative of you being
Absolutely.
here. So, and you know, I think we were all just really excited to chat with you because, as much as you know, guys like Evan and Mark and what have you are, you know, very well known on the streams and things like this. You know, clearly you put a lot of work in as well, and it's just wonderful to be able to hear some of your story, if that's okay.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, well, definitely our pleasure.
this is going to be the first Star Wars podcast we've ever done.
Yeah.
In
Yes.
context, we just had off-pod chat with Brian about his Star Wars collection that's sitting behind him in this visual as well, which looks awesome. But we can touch on that, can't we, Brian? I think that would be quite nice as well.
Yeah, whatever you want to talk about. I mean, I've been working at Kenner Hasbro for a little over 25 years, so 26 and a half years.
Amazing.
He just said the magic word, the Kenner word,
Yeah,
the greatest
Kenner.
toy company that ever existed, and I miss it dearly. So you started at Kenner. Well, it would have still been, I assume it would have been Hasbro then, wouldn't it? The end of the 90s.
Yeah, it was still Hasbro Kenner back when I started. Yes, I started as an intern back technically in I think it was 98.
Wow.
Or maybe 96. It was somewhere around there, between school and work. So Hasbro Kenner had a great relationship with the University of Cincinnati, and so I was able to work at a dream job at a very early age.
Was it something that you kind of wanted to do before that, or was it something you were aware of?
Well, honestly, if you talk to most, I would say most toy designers, or even people in the industrial design field, most of them stumble into it.
Right.
Because it's something that's not really well known. So I started out in engineering, but it was only because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And I had looked at architecture, and I looked at a lot of other, graphic design and stuff like that. But going to Cincinnati and living in the dorms, my story I've told a lot of people, but for you the first time, I was living in the dorms, and it was a Friday night, and there was a weird smell in the air, like a very chemical smell, and I was just like, I had gone back to the dorm room after being out or whatever, and I'm like, it smells like paint or turpentine, like weird chemicals. And so I walked through the halls, and I stumbled into a dorm room. Doors are open already, and there's a guy sitting, drawing furiously, drawing cars, and I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? He's like, I got a big crit, on Monday morning. I'm going to be working all weekend long. And so that was kind of my introduction. He was like, yeah, you should go check out the industrial design program. It's in the basement of the design building.
Wow.
And like a proper lab.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's where the work, the workshop is. They shoved us in the basement. Yeah, I went and checked it out, and they had a senior crit that I looked at, and I was like, that's exactly what I want to do.
Wow.
So I switched majors, and then I discovered that you could do toy design.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, what's better than that? Living out your childhood dreams in reality as a real job. And then I found out about Kenner, being able to work in town. I'd also worked at Little Tykes, doing preschool, big roto-molded stuff. But then I finally got a job offer to work full-time at Kenner, so Hasbro. And it's been a great journey ever since then.
Man, at Kenner, at that time, it must have been really exciting, because 98, 99, that's when Star Wars is first coming back, isn't it? The toys were starting to be reintroduced with Shadows of the Empire and Power of the Force. Were you a big Star Wars fan before?
I was, yes. I grew up on Star Wars. It was my, I have to say, I know this is a Transformers podcast, but I would say that was where my passion was.
I love the toy lines.
Yeah.
We love Star Wars too.
Yeah. So, I would say Transformers was probably, as a kid, was my second favorite, and then probably G.I. Joe. And then I'd probably have to say then Dungeons and Dragons, the old TSR figures. I had a good collection of those as a kid, until I went away to college and came home, and I found that my mom had sold them for 25 cents at a garage sale.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. It's a typical story, but anyways, that was kind of how I stumbled into design and toy design.
And so, what lines were you working on initially? Was it Star Wars to begin with? Or?
So when I was originally hired, as an intern, I worked on Batman. For a while.
Liam's
which
Batman
line?
crazy,
sort of like Ninja Force and
it was again, I was an intern then, so I was working on some of the different movie lines back in the day,
Batman and Robin.
Batman and Robin, Batman Forever,
Oh my gosh! Even better, one of my favorite toy lines.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, there's all kinds of great, interesting stories as far as those things go. You know, just being able to work with different licensees on these amazing properties. You know, so tons of fun.
Do we have to talk about Transformers?
Well, no.
These toy lines are way better.
These are all classics.
We always talk about Transformers.
You can ask whatever you want, Liam, I'm sure.
Yeah, honestly,
Yeah,
it's your
we'll
favorite, Liam.
come
Just
back.
go for it. Yeah.
Well, no, it's just like, man, that walking into Kenner, what was that like for the first time? Was it still quite Kenner-y at the time? Or was it more
So
Hasbro?
I think most people, if you're familiar with the Kenner history, probably think of it when it was in more in the center downtown of Cincinnati, and I think it was called the old Kroger building. But when I was working there, it was called the Elsinore Place building. I think we were on the 5th floor. Each different floor had different properties on it.
Yeah.
But, it was a smaller building, but a newer, a little bit more modern building. But it was cool just to be able to go, the Transformers team would be on the floor, the Batman on a floor, Star Wars on a floor. There was some girls, I think, properties back then. There was still a model shop that you had to, go to, every now and then to get things painted or whatever.
That sounds like an absolute
It's not
dream.
much different, honestly. It's not much different than the current, Hasbro facility. Other than the current Hasbro facility is an old factory building that it's been renovated to office spaces. So instead of being a high-rise building, it's just a giant sprawling factory kind of layout. So.
The job itself must be quite different now to what it used to be like, or not so much, would you say?
The basics of toy design, I would say, is still, to me, it's still the same.
Yeah.
The differences are the tools that you use, and so when I first started interning, I had probably better computers at home for my own personal use than the company did.
Yeah.
I was like, should I bring my computer in? I have some CAD programs, whatever. Now everybody has, a MacBook Pro or whatever, and, Cintiq monitors so you can draw straight on the screen.
Yeah.
Being able to do that was like a huge shift. And then now, you still have to know what you're doing. You still have to be able to understand what is needed, understand the consumer, understand the marketplace, the retail environment. Those are probably more challenging now than probably ever before. There's more competition. The space where things are sold is just more competitive. Entertainment brands are even more fashion, so quick to market and in and out. Kids' attention spans are shorter. There's totally. Just it's the same, but it's just faster and more competitive, maybe.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. A bit like life in general, I think.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So, but people are still people. Kids are still kids.
Yeah.
So I think those basic natural development stages that kids go through, they haven't changed.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So.
It's even what I was saying to you just off pod there that I was playing upstairs before my son's bedtime, just with Star Wars figures you designed, and then some kind of Marvel figures as well, and then some old original Star Wars figures that I had from Kenner as well, and they all work, because it doesn't really matter if there's different sizes. It's about that imagination, that play value, and all that part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and to kids, until you start getting into that, maybe it's around 8, 9, a little bit older, where scale and detail and authenticity start, resonating. But before that, it's more about storytelling and living out the adventure and using the toys to help, spark your imagination and play. And then, at earlier ages, at preschool ages, there's a lot of developmental things that are going through, and their understanding of the world is much smaller and more focused to, if you have a kid, that as a preschooler, their familiarity with the world is what you let them see and experience. So it's like, oh, there's a garbage truck that went down the road. That's really cool because it's big and I see it. It comes by once a week, or a school bus, or they get to go to the store. So yeah, it's just, there's different stages. And I think those are just always true, no matter how the world seems to change. People are still people.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So what was your route then from like Batman and this kind of stuff? I mean, obviously we know kind of where you got to Transformers, I think in around 2003, or was it before that?
Yeah. That was probably my first foray into Transformers from a design standpoint, was the Universe line, a little bit, maybe I worked with Aaron Archer for quite a bit at that time. So yeah, it was just funny because I worked with him back at Kenner on Batman and Star Wars and stuff like that. He was actually the person who interviewed me. He had just been hired.
Oh, nice.
And he was the one who interviewed me for the internship job. I got introduced to, if anybody is familiar with Star Wars, and Mark Boudreau. There was just some really amazing, awesome people to get to work with.
Yeah, for sure.
So I learned a lot. That's probably the part of the thing that kind of keeps you going, even like the turbulence of like the industry and things like that. But the relationships you have with people, right?
For sure.
There's not too many other careers, I would say, where you find people that love what they get to do.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So I'm very fortunate that I get to do something that I love.
Yeah, that's really lovely. Yeah, it's so nice. I mean, with Aaron, we hear quite a bit from Aaron because, of course, he does his own podcast these days, which is really, really good podcast. And, I love listening to that. And I find all his stories and everything from that time just absolutely fascinating, and his sort of insight into what some of the creative decisions were, and almost sometimes the road not traveled as well, why certain decisions weren't made as much as why some were. I find all of that really, really quite fascinating from that time.
And sometimes you don't, there's things that just happen and you're like, oh, okay, I guess that's what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talking about Universe, of course, you were, I believe, brought on to do this line of repaints.
Yeah, so I think at the time, I'm going back in the Wayback Machine, that I think there may have been some kind of lull in what I was doing at the time. And so I had some bandwidth, and the Transformers team needed some help. And Aaron was like, sure, just take all these things and make them look awesome. And I was like, well, is there any kind of guidance you can give me? Like, how far can I stray? Like, I don't want to do anything that it's going to offend, the hardcore fan, even though, you're doing things that are for kids. There's kind of that line you have to kind of like tread lightly on from time to time. But so I remember like figures like Depth Charge.
Yeah.
So a lot of things actually did get still in, because I was still coming out of Star Wars. So there was a lot of things that were definitely influenced by Star Wars still. So
that's so
the color scheme on that particular figure, you might notice that it's very similar to the Slave One.
Do you know? Wow. And now that you said it, as soon as you said about the Star Wars influence,
pieces finally fall into place.
I was like, I can see it totally. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so that was like my favorite toy as a kid that I had was the Slave One. So and Boba Fett. So I was like, okay, fine. This kind of shaped like that.
Yeah. I love that repaint so much. I have it now, by the way. And but I think so many of those Universe repaints are sort of fascinating to collectors now, even sort of 20 whatever years on, because I think at the time, a lot of people were like, "Whoa, these are different." And it's what we've seen over time is that so many of these repaints are kind of create a bit of a stir when they're on release, and then later on, a lot of collectors find them super desirable, and they almost kind of become like really hard to find, a lot of them, and go for big money as well. So a lot of those Universe 2003 repaints now, they command big prices, honestly, on eBay and whatever else.
I wish I had a lot of those, but back in the day, I had to space is a premium sometimes when you're a toy fan and collector. You have to make decisions sometimes, and I was like, "Oh,
tell us about it."
Yeah, so I had a lot of kids that my kids were friends with that loved Transformers, and I was just like, I ended up giving almost all of my Transformers that I had ever worked on just away to kids. Which is great. They found good homes,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
They were well loved, and so.
Were there any others that you remember, like in particular? I know it's a long time ago, but were there other like inspirations?
I don't know. Like I remember Thunder Howl, the purple. I think that was the one that was purple, right? Or maybe it had been called something else. Actually, I'm trying to think now, but it was the wolf with it was purple with some silver and red deco on it.
Was the Silver Bolt?
Sorry, that's what it was. That's what I was thinking of. Silver Bolt.
I was wondering, because that's like a purple. It's like it is like a wolf, but I guess it's a winged wolf.
Yes,
and that's the one a lot of people often comment on is kind of where that came from.
Well, honestly, so I was like, Aaron was like, "Hey, redeco this one," and I was like, "Okay, any recommendations?" And I think he was, if I remember correctly, he might have even been in a meeting. I was like sticking my head in the door talking to him, and he was like, "It's maybe use purple as the base color." And I'm like, "Okay." So I think it may have been just something that unauspicious, just a comment, and like I ran with it, so I was like, okay, so a lot of it was just like with that line was like just making things look cool and fun, trying to tie things into, like, I didn't want them to be too serious in some cases because they were a little bit more kid targeted, and also like, hey, balancing out number of Decepticons and numbers of Autobots or whatever. Oh, this is this could be an Autobot now, or this could be a Decepticon now. So there was a lot of freedom, I guess, back then. It wasn't as maybe as rigid.
Yeah,
in some of the things. It was just like, hey, we have these old tools, make them cool.
Yeah. I mean, some of the color schemes are really kind of out there. I mean, I like the Silver Bolt is I think it's the combo of the purple and the green. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
So that was I remember that one. What was the unicorn? What was the little unicorn?
There was Battle Unicorn, which was that was the one. Yeah. That one was Magna Stampede.
That's the one.
Little unicorn repaint from Beast Machines.
Back then, it was like, make something cool, and then we'll come up with a cool name, or maybe we'll look at a name that maybe we already own and have trademarked, or something that we need to keep using. Sometimes those kind of things happen from time to time.
Totally.
Just like, hey, we own this thing, and if you don't keep the usage of the trademarks active, then you can lose the trademarks.
Yeah, of course.
So sometimes it's just it can be legal things like that. It's like, oh, we don't want to lose that. Okay, well, we'll call this that.
Totally. Do you know? I was thinking, Brian, because as a line, it's as you said, it's quite an eclectic line. Obviously, you've got all these different tooling that you could play around with as well. From a creative point of view, did you find it exciting, challenging?
Well, honestly, I was like, I'll be honest, I was pretty oblivious to a lot of a lot of that, because it was more a lot of that was Aaron specifically going, here's a Excel spreadsheet of items.
Yeah, right.
Where some of these are like it may have highlighter with a highlighter. We're planning on using this one and this one and this one. Use any of the other ones, and then I just go through and like try to find them. Like, oh, okay, that one's cool. And then just play with it. Or we need a lower price item, or we need a slight middle price item. So balancing out the price points in the waves of and assortments back then, which is always something that you have to kind of do. It wasn't there wasn't a lot of maybe there wasn't a lot of science back into it, maybe as much as there is with more modern lines, and there's a lot more scrutiny. I don't think there was as much scrutiny on things back then. It was like, if it's cool, if it looks cool,
fun, that's great.
Do it. If it looks cool, then do it.
I think that really worked, and I think that's what has meant that some of those utterly weird repaints. Forgive me for saying, I mean that in the nicest way. You know, that like they're so outlandish in a way, but they've stood the test of time purely for that reason. You know, because they weren't safe choices as such. They were something a bit different.
Well, and I think that's why he asked me to do it, is because it was like I wasn't beholden to anything. He was just like, whatever you want to do.
Sure.
It is, whenever you see a reference now, it is whenever you see like a repaint, it's usually a reference to something else, isn't it? Whereas then it's like, what is this? And it's kind of, the mystery is always like the fun part. When
because that's what, and that, honestly, that was my biggest concern when I was doing it. I was like I said, I didn't want to do anything that was like going to be like crazy wrong. I remember feeling that way, even though I was, so I was still a fairly young designer back then, but that was kind of, I remember that was what was going through my head, was like, man, you're just like giving me this and let me run with it, but I don't want to like screw it up either. But Aaron was like,
where are the boundaries?
Aaron was like, there are no boundaries. Just I was like, okay.
Off we go. Brilliant.
Do you remember, did you do some of the Beast Wars repaints for Armada then as well? I don't know if you remember.
I may have done some of those, but I didn't work on the Transformers line back then. It was probably, it was only like a year maybe. It wasn't a very long time. And then I was back on like doing more Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it was just because there was a lull between, there was discussions about like what's going to happen with the Star Wars line. Is it going to be put on like on a hiatus for a while? Those kind of discussions that were happening.
And I believe Transformers at the time, they were struggling to come up with enough product to kind of, to put on shelves. So
so I know one of the things you had asked me, so maybe this is a segue there, is like, so I got a chance to work on the Star Wars Transformers.
Yes, of course.
Line.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first things, like, again, that was Star Wars, or I don't know, what the crossovers, converters, I don't know. Being able to sell that and, work with Lucasfilm. And that was before, or right around the time before the first TF1 movie came out.
Yeah.
So, there's lots of discussions about doing that with the Star Wars team. And so the discussions were like, well, who owns the like intellectual property of doing it? Because you're like crossing, like the proverbial Ghostbusters, you're crossing the streams here, and so, it was determined that they were powered by Transformers technology, but they weren't, I guess in Lucasfilm's mind, they weren't sentient Transformers,
right? Yeah,
at the time, and that's why the original line came with little minifigures. So
like Action Fleet, it was
exactly. But being able to work on that like Death Star Transformer,
nice.
And I worked on almost all of them. There was a few of them. There was a few of them that I didn't work on just because a few other people were like, "Oh, I want to work on one." And like Mark Bidrow, like I said, he loved the AT-AT, so he was like, "Oh, can I do the AT-AT?" Or yes, sure. I have more than enough work to between doing all the regular action figures and the Transformers. Mark was doing most of the Star Wars regular vehicle line. And then Ham Woodhouse was handling most of like the role play items, but almost everything else was falling on my plate.
So did you work on the Millennium Falcon, the Han Solo and Chewbacca?
Yeah.
That's the really, I think of all of them, I'm right in saying, oh no guys, that's like the legendary one that everybody kind of thinks of.
Yeah. It is.
I still find parts of it at my mum's house because my brother had it when I was a kid, when he was a little kid, so he still got it, like parts of it.
That was definitely a challenging one. Again, some of the challenges as far as from a licensing standpoint is like getting the sculpt approval. Like, where's the line between making something a recognizable like character, making it feel like a robot, so trying to navigate the aesthetics of things. And I thought that the David Venemeyer, who was our sculptor back in back in the day. He still works at Hasbro. But, I was working with him, and he was like, what about doing this and that? So there was a lot of collaboration that would happen from the design side of things. It wasn't just like, a designer just like, no, it's my way or the highway, It was very collaborative. So
that's good.
Yeah.
What was Lucasfilm's reaction like with you, with working for Because this is still really early, like for crossovers and things, and like Lucasfilm were always notoriously protective of IPs and the characters had to look certain ways. Like, what was their reaction when the ideas like first floated, other than like worrying about who owned it? Were they quite excited, or were they a bit like, "Oh, what's this?"
It was. There was a lot of back and forth discussions. Again, a lot of it had to do with the IP standpoint of things. But I just kit bashed. I'm sure you guys are familiar with kit bashing. It's what we call just taking old toys, and I took I think it was Iguanus, maybe, because it had like the little panels. Yeah, and I took some Action Fleet, actually, I have a model of the kit bashed out over in my cabinet over here.
Oh wow!
But anyways, some Darth Vader parts, and I basically just kit bashed, cut things up, glued it with some super glue, so I had no acrylate, and I was like, took it down to the model shop and say, hey, to one of our painters, and it's like, hey, can you paint this to look like the TIE Advanced Fighter and Darth Vader? And once we had that like model, it was just like, this is what it could look like.
Yeah.
We showed that to them, and they were like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool, actually.
Sometimes you have to see like it in physical form, like a representation.
Yeah. Even though you have like, sometimes you have drawings and stuff like that, but actually seeing something in your hand and understanding. But Lucasfilm was very adamant about Transformers as a play pattern.
Okay.
We're like, no, and but to us, Transformers is an IP. It's a brand.
Yeah. So not just an action feature as such. Yeah. But I get you.
We were able to thread the needle and get it all to work out. So
that's cool.
Yeah. It's amazing. I still remember the very first time I saw them, because it was such a unique thing, especially for that time. Like now we're so used to crossovers, but then it was like, whoa! And then being a big Star Wars fan and knowing how protective Lucasfilm are, because there are so many stories about how Lucas had no control in the Kennedys, and like he would see that certain things that would be like, has to look like this, and so seeing that, it felt like a real step into the future of what toys were going to become.
Yeah, and I think I had a good relationship with the Lucasfilm team, so I think we had built up enough trust that we're like, well, we don't want to do anything to hurt our own brand, and we don't want to do anything that hurts your brand, Star Wars, so we're not doing anything. So we did some testing, and then that was actually one of the crazy test findings that we had, was that Death Star, when they started doing testing, because again, it was around the same time as the movie, or maybe a little bit before the movie, when they were doing testing with kids, they said, well, who's your favorite Transformer? And the problem was, the answer was Darth Vader.
Really?
That actually was the most popular Transformer back then, was Darth Vader.
Amazing.
Oh wow.
No, then after the Transformer movie hit, then it was like, obviously then it was Bumblebee and Optimus, but we were like, whoa, there was like some flags that went up, like
oops. That's really funny. That's hilarious.
That's really funny.
Yeah, I mean, that toy again now that toy line, is quite legendary now, and you've got a lot of because of course you've got a lot of younger collectors on the scene now as well, who have grown up with the 2007 movie and that whole era as their Transformers, but a lot of them have started to kind of look back to the Star Wars line and that kind of thing, for example, from even when they were kids or even before, and kind of look at it with new eyes and go, oh my god, look at all this old stuff and things like that. And as Liam said, I think those early collabs feel like they really kind of paved the way for everything that we're getting now in a weird way? Or would you say that's right, or not? Not so much?
Everything, everything comes and goes, and there's cycles to things. Toy lines kind of almost have a life of their own, and sometimes that means there needs to be, things that are put out to pasture for a little bit, and then give things a chance to rest, and then you'll find that 10 years later or so, the people who are young kids who are playing with a certain thing, then now they're older, and they start having a job, having some income, and there's some nostalgia to things, and then the things can come back again, because there's they have kids, and they're like, oh, this was a toy that I loved when I was a kid, and you start introducing those things that you love to your own kids, and again, it just becomes this very cyclical thing that happens, just because of the passion and the nostalgia, that just toys just brings out in people.
I completely agree.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm actually thinking, so obviously you worked on the Play School Transformers stuff as well.
Yeah. So that was so after Star Wars, that was a big decision. And I wrestled with it because, like I said, in my head, my dream was to be the next Mark Boudreau.
Right.
I that was where I was like, if I could do anything, that's what I would, and again, I was like, Star Wars is going to last forever, whatever, and hopefully it does. But, back then I was just like, you know what? I've been working on this line for 15 years, and I need just I need a change, just from a career standpoint. And Jared Wade came to me and was like, hey, Brian, I'm going over to the Play School team. Would you be interested in joining me? And I was like, wow. Again, it was weird because I was thinking about that already, changing. I wasn't thinking about changing that drastically, but I was like, well, I did like preschool stuff, toys, because there's just something about that age. You can just get in and make fun things. It's less. You don't have to deal with there's different kinds of bureaucracies and different kinds of challenges, but you can make some just fun little toys, little features, and so I had been wrestling with that for a little bit, and when he asked me that, I was like, okay. And then everybody was just shocked that I left the Boys Action. Back then it was called Boys Action. Went to the preschool business, and then from there, I was able to start working on basically Hasbro's version of Imagine Next kind of a line.
Yeah.
Totally.
So that was kind of the competition for us. So we were looking at what is Mattel doing, with Imagine Next. They're really doing some fun things, and what can we do? And so looking at Rescue Bots, so Transformers. Eventually we were able to get a show,
really good show as well.
Yeah, brilliant show. Yeah, really good.
The Star Wars line. What else? We had some Power Rangers stuff eventually after we acquired Power Rangers from Saban. We worked on. I'd even started working on Ghostbusters. We had looked, and there was a bunch of things that we'd even pitched, and they were right on the fence about going forward with. But obviously the Marvel. So Marvel, Star Wars, Transformers, and Power Rangers was kind of the big four that we had. And then in 2008, late 2018, I was told I think they're gonna take our team and disperse it amongst, reorganize the groups. Brian, would you like to go on to Transformers? they need help on Transformers. I was like, wow. I'm like, okay, but that was my opportunity to get back to the action category, the older boys stuff, or older kids stuff. And so I was like, great. So that's how I started working on the Transformers again.
Well, that preschool stuff, because again, going back to my son, so his first intro, even though I've got a robot room which is full of G1, but he could play with that. But he was Rescue Bots, preschool, the Dinosaur Optimus, which was just ridiculous.
The T-Rex.
The T-Rex. It had the best sound effects ever. I loved that so much. And he did as well when I gave it back to him a few years later. But but he, and what Six was saying as well, that with Rescue Bots cartoon, which was brilliant, but those figures as well. And I remember seeing them thinking, this is a bit different. How's this going to work? But I had a son of like 3, and all my friends were a 3 and 4 year old, and they all massively got into it. And they got into it because it brought like that kind of one-step spin changers and all this kind of really fun gimmicks and all that kind of stuff. And I was just wondering, Brian, like when you're obviously doing action figures, the gimmick thing's slightly lessened to a certain extent. So was that something that you enjoyed? The challenge of creating something that is that kind of minimal, if you like.
Yeah. Like I said, it was like I was able to look at it less as not that there weren't toys that I was working on in Star Wars and other things, but they for the most part that you are appealing to a large portion to a fan audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things. And the fluctuation happens where there's like. This is across all kind of those 80s IPs with G.I. Joe, Transformers, Masters of the Universe, whatever it is. You have that core nostalgia collector group, right? Yeah. But where a company makes money, is when you have a huge new influx of new kids into a line.
Totally.
So. I think that I look at it almost like each brand is kind of like almost like mutual funds and stocks and bonds, where like your fan business is kind of like your stable bond market, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But your penny stocks are like come up with a really cool, fun toy feature that's going to really resonate with kids. Yeah, and now, boom, it takes off, right?
That's so interesting to hear as well, because to be honest, and I say this as, an adult collector myself, I think there's often a lot of debate in that sphere from adult collectors where they almost feel a little bit like they kind of own that space, if that makes sense. And you do see people talk about like, well, kid sales, what does it really matter, kind of thing, And I think now more than ever, because collectors feel that so much of what toy companies are doing is speaking to them, but maybe they're not aware of a lot of the children's advertising and stuff that goes on as well, but that's by the by. It's almost like there's this belief that actually the collector market is sort of sacrosanct, if you like, and that the kid appeal is lessened nowadays than it perhaps once was. So it's interesting to hear that's maybe not the case.
I think it's both true and not true, depending on the exact time. Because, like I said, just like with not that I play the stock market, but like you need to have stable growth or a stable market in a business to be able to take risks.
Yeah.
So, and that stability is what you can draft off of, and you don't want to. So I'm saying that because you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. So, like again, if I go back to the Star Wars analogy, there was a time when there was discussion about the 3 3/4 inch line changing the vintage card back size and format. And like the debate was, if we do that, does that give, our core collector community a chance to go, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, done.
I'm done.
Jumping off point. Yeah.
You're right. So you gave me an excuse to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So those are discussions that happen with all toy lines.
Wow.
Like you want to, you you want to be able to keep people engaged, but you also need to be able to grow and have creativity and innovation. So it becomes that double-edged sword. Like, how much is too much? When is the right time to do it? And those are the discussions that happen in the back rooms, and in the toy buildings,
Yeah, totally.
So it sounds a bit stressful. I mean, I do think that stuff like Rescue Bots and that whole, as Jason was saying, I think that was for me certainly brilliant. And I became a father around the right time for all of that as well. And I thought it was great because it put Transformers as a brand, as one example, in the same sphere as stuff like Paw Patrol and things like this for that younger crowd, totally. And it's for me very directly the reason that my son loves Transformers now was because he had a lot of those toys, like the Rescue Bots Bumblebee and Ratchet and all of that kind of stuff, Boulder, he loved all of that. And like the Bumblebee, the little flip changer Bumblebee, was his toy of the year, the Christmas that he got it, very distinctly. Like
that's awesome.
He just loved that thing. And, funnily enough, he's given it away now to charity because he's, got older and whatever else. But it's absolutely fired his interest and whatever else. And I think that we certainly when we were young, we never really had that introductory line, as it were.
That was what the whole impetus behind that line was. We need to get kids, because of the competition,
exactly,
for the intellectual properties and the attention for eyeballs, and the sooner you get somebody and you get and they become a fan, even as a kid, the goal is get them young and keep them. It's really
makes sense.
It's simple
because
really.
there's so much competition now.
I don't want to sound too marketing speak there, but that's really kind of
run a business.
That was really a lot of what was driving those decisions, because it was such a huge investment and I guess even a risk. Because we started doing Rescue Bots. Well, that line started without entertainment.
Yeah,
and then the entertainment followed, and that's why you look at some of the original figures. We weren't even working with Takara on some of the original figures, and then it's shifted over to Takara.
Interesting.
That's how I got my nephew into it. It was before the cartoon. It was because I think he's 14 or 15 now, but he was very little when Rescue Bots launched, and I think I'd just gotten Generations Metroplex, so he'd come round and he'd have interest in the vintage stuff, and he must have been like 3 or 4. And so I got him the Rescue Bots Optimus Prime, and he was just sold on it for like a couple of years. That's all he was into. And then the show came out and we had to watch it, and it was just brilliant fun. That's how we sort of connected and stuff. And I remember having to import Chase from America because it wasn't out here yet and stuff like that. And it was just that Optimus Prime and seeing him have that for the first time, and like
amazing. His
mind blown, and it taking me back to being a kid in like 1986 or 7 or 85 and having Optimus Prime and being the same, but like just completely different toy, and amazing.
And that's also a good reason to have good lawyers, because if you don't trademark things, then other companies will come along and use the same names and make them the same colors, and then sell a lot of them.
Specifically,
that was because originally it was Chase, and then Paw Patrol came along and made a blue dog that was a police character that was the same name, but they trademarked it before us.
Oh no!
So then we had to that happened with several things, and that's why you would see like Autobot Chase or whatever.
Chase,
exactly. Those are when you have you have good lawyers.
Yeah, of course.
Cease and desist. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
The design of those toys has always fascinated me as well, though, because they're, again, from a kind of collector perspective, you'll get people that maybe don't look at them in the same way as their multi-point articulated whatever it is thing that they pay a lot of money for. But actually, when you look at how they work and the fact that they've also got to survive in the hands of 3 or 4 year olds sometimes, the design of them is, to me, really quite incredible. The way they transform so simply, this kind of thing, but actually the engineering is anything but simple to kind of produce a simple result, if that makes sense. Is that am I saying it correctly?
You are. And that just creating a process to evaluate that was something that we had to do. Because again, when you're creating a whole line kind of from scratch and you're trying to reach a new consumer, that preschooler has their understanding of IP is again very, very narrow. So they may not even know who an Optimus or a Bumblebee is, for example.
Yeah.
Right. So you're trying to get that first handshake, but understanding their developmental stages and how they actually can manipulate things and their understanding of how things should work. And so some of it was a little bit trial and error. So, and then we started things that we thought because we wanted things to be very intuitive, because a 3-year-old can't read.
Yeah.
So if you hand a kid, a toy and you're expecting them to, transform a thing or convert it, and their expectation of how it should happen is not the way the toy actually works, you're going to create frustration, and potentially it's going to get broken, or at least maybe a clutch is going to be out of alignment. We started working with Takara to basically create like very rudimentary models. And again, the development schedule stayed the same. So we were like trying to like squeeze these stages of like testing within our normal development process. So they would send us some very rudimentary models of like, okay, we think that, Bumblebee, you should grab the side and pull it. But the question is, well, where is a kid going to hold it?
Yeah.
Because where you think they might hold it is not where they actually do hold it. And I would say one of the most interesting learnings that we had was on the Blade. There was an early version of a Blades jet.
All right.
And we thought it was a very like innovative and simple way to convert it. You would grab the wings and just rotate them down, and then the front of the nose of the plane would fold down. And this is when before we started this process, this is when we're like, oh, we need a process. We got some samples and we took them to some kids, some 3 and 4 year olds, stick in there. You don't tell them what to do. You just like, what do you think he should do? They all grabbed the front of the nose of the plane and just ratcheted it down. And they're holding the wing to do it. And like, oh crap, that's not the way, that's not what we thought it was going to happen.
Love it. That's hilarious. I guess so much of it must have been in testing.
Yeah. And once you have like a general understanding of, there's certain form factors and vehicle shapes, right?
Yeah.
You kind of start to anticipate things going forward. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, but that was the big learning, was like, it didn't break it because, they're so well made, but it got the clutch out of alignment. So you would have to ratchet the clutch of the nose of the plane back up to get it back into alignment to get it to work again.
Which a 3-year-old
but there was still customer complaints, because they were like, every mom was like, oh, it's not working anymore.
Well, I don't know if it means anything, but as I say, my son was certainly entertained by those for a number of years. I think the only complaint he ever had was that his boulder, he played with it in the sand once and like buried it. And then, of course, it all had sand inside the mechanism and that. And I must have spent a good hour or two trying to clean this thing out. I can't even tell you. Do you know what I mean? But we did get it working again, but it was never quite. Do you know what I mean?
Never quite the same.
Never quite the same again.
Was that his complaint, or is this you now launching his complaint?
No, exactly. It was my complaint to him at the time. That
I'll see if I'll see if I have one around the building. I'll send you a replacement.
Well, it was quite a while ago, but I appreciated it. Yeah, but I loved all of those, and I always thought that the spring-loaded mechanisms and the one-step stuff and all of that was just so clever and just worked so well as well. And it always fascinated me from the perspective of like, that's not what, a lot of toys that are aimed at collectors do. But there's just a sort of a fascinating way that they work so elegantly.
And it captures that magic of Transformers, which is going from robot to vehicle, and that's what I always notice with my nephew is like when they're a kid, that's what they want to do. They just want to go. It's not the I need ankle joints, knee joints, all of this thing. It's the magic of going from a car, like in the show, so fast. They
have a great the sense of accomplishment, like, and that's one of the things that I really do love about the preschool line is, I mean, it still happens with older kids, but and fans, but going to stand in a toy aisle, and just stand in a preschool aisle and watch a reaction of a young preschooler. There's nothing holding them back, whether they love something or hate something, right? Their eyes, something catches their eye, and it's like, wow, they're instantly enthralled by whatever it is, whether it's a light or a sound or a character that they recognize or love. And that pure, and giving a kid a toy like that and the pure delight that they experience, you can't beat that.
Yeah, totally. Completely agree. It's interesting you say that, Brian, because that's been a bit of a lifelong mantra for me as well, in that if you can create something that a preschooler enjoys, we'll all enjoy it. Because preschoolers are so harsh as audience. If they're bored or not interested, they'll walk off. They'll just be like, I'm not playing with that. And they just won't engage with it. Yeah. And we were all those kids at one point as well. And it was interesting what Six was saying earlier, and with my son, is that was our first Transformers experience with those preschool toys as well. And I do remember in the fandom, there was a bit of these are only like 3-step changes or 1-step changes or something. But it wasn't about that. It was the fun factor of that and the character that came out of those as well. And the fact it ended up getting Rescue Bots animation created out of it as well, which is quite unusual. Normally it's the other way around, as you mentioned as well. Just absolute joy that we had from that, which is so job well done is all I'd say. It was great, really great.
Oh,
the team did a great job. It wasn't just me, but we had a great team. I think almost all of us are still with the company that worked back on that stuff.
That's cool. That's great.
In various places, but it was a great time. We were a very tight knit group. And we were all, we all had a passion for making fun toys. So
it shows. It's great.
So our mantra, I think our goals were like it needed to be easy to do, it needed to be intuitive, and make sure that there's like surprise and delight, that would happen with the toys. So if you can. And hit that right price point. If you can do those things,
winner.
You have a successful business.
Did that for me, honestly. I remember thinking that in many ways these were some of the most impressive Transformers items that I'd seen, and I say that without any kind of hyperbole, and I'm not blowing smoke or whatever, just because I was genuinely so impressed with the kind of output and the engineering and everything involved with it. It was
we worked really with a Jima-san on most of those items. He's a great designer at Tomi Takara.
Yeah, absolutely. And so where did that kind of lead you then from there? Because of course I know now you work on a lot of the collaborative projects.
So now I'm so right now, so like I said, it was the end of 18-ish. I think that's when I came back over. And I was starting to work on Rise of the Beast items. So, and then TF1 toys. So I'm in charge of all the kid segments for Transformers. So whether it's a movie or not.
So presumably like Earthspark and stuff as well.
Yeah. So Earthspark. Yeah.
Brilliant.
In addition to that, I talked to Michelino, our director, and I was like, hey, I don't know what you have, but because again, I was coming over, and to me, I want to continue to grow and learn, and and Mark and Evan do such a great job with the Studio Series and Generation line.
Yeah,
I was like, can you think of a way that I could, because I'm working on the kids business, and that's great. It's siloed, it's kind of, for the most part, I don't need to know, or whoever's working on it doesn't have to know every bit of lore and history about Transformers to be able to work on a kid's line, right?
Sure.
You need to know enough to be dangerous, but you don't have to. You don't have to know, Beachcomber or whatever.
Right.
You don't have to know like the intricate, levels of detail in the 40 years of Transformers, and so I was like, is there a line or a segment or some way that I could just work with Mark and Evan a little bit in a way, and he came back and was like, well, we're looking at doing these collabs, and you have a lot of experience dealing with licensors. So I'm like, okay, again, it's kind of low hanging fruit. It's like, I need to know a little bit, especially because really the challenge I was trying to overcome was to be able to do partial tooled items, or even redecos, or like what's available. You have this long history of things, some of the tools don't exist anymore. Some of them still do. Yeah. Some of them are being used. Some of them are not being used. Like being able to wrap your head around that, that is like, it's a constant moving matrix of parts and pieces that you're just like, so it can be a little bit daunting and overwhelming. So I was like trying to come up with a way to try to gain knowledge, but not at the detriment of the brand or myself or the team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, well, why don't you work on the collab business as well? I'm like, oh, that's great. That's cool. I get to work on fun things, but I get to work on a lot of different IPs and just take stabs at whatever it is, and come up with, again, fun Transformers, which is not too dissimilar from like the Star Wars, crossover line.
Well, I was going to say, and you, I believe you've worked on the new Mandalorian one, for example, haven't you? So that must be quite weird to kind of come back to.
It was kind of like full circle, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It must be quite strange. So, have you worked on all the like Ectotron and that kind of stuff? And
I didn't work on that. So that was done. So there was a couple that had already been started, and it was kind of like, and it was just kind of proving out the concept of the model. So I didn't work on the original Ectotron or the Jurassic World big T-Rex.
Yeah.
And was there another one? There was maybe a G.I. Joe item. Whatever the first one,
the Megatron his tank.
Yeah, So I didn't. Those are I didn't work on those.
Okay.
So those predated me. So when I came on, I picked up from that point on.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Basically, so then the latest round of Jurassic,
the second one.
The second one I did, the Star Wars one they're familiar with, the Turtles one that just came out.
Yeah, which is super popular. I love that because you've got people, of course, buying 4 of them.
Absolutely. Which is kind of weird because I originally, what I really wanted to do with that one was to make it Metalhead.
Right. Wow, that would be popular, I think. A lot of people. So I've seen some good customs of that already.
Yeah. So there was, that was the original. The original head was supposed to be Metalhead.
Yeah.
So, but you have to work with the licensors. Make changes along the way.
Gosh,
there must be a lot of that.
So much sense.
A lot of them that they say, oh, we want it this way or whatever else. There must be quite a bit of that.
Yeah, so that happens on everything when you're dealing with those kind of licensed things. And then there's other ones that are like really crazy where it's like, okay, it's a license, it's like a intellectual property, but then there's a licensed vehicle, or maybe there's 2 licenses on top of it. It's like I'm working with 3 licensors to make this item. Like, this is crazy.
Is that what it was like with the Knight Rider, the recent Knight Rider?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Also, I love it. It's absolutely brilliant. I have them all, but this one in particular, it just feels like it's got a real retro charm to the way it transforms. It's so fast, and it reminds me a lot of the sort of the Unicron trilogy sort of era of toy. It's big and
being able to get the electronics into that was also like, like it has to have the light bar. And then I'm like, well, if you're going to pay for lights, you might as well have a speaker, like, right?
Oh, I can ask you a question, actually. So the toy is called Agent Knight, but when you press the sound effects button, it says, "You can call me Kit." Was he originally going to be called Kit?
Well, we hadn't determined. So we so just from a development standpoint, the electronic package that has to be released, basically happens around the exact same time as tool start. Yeah. So
wow,
it's further along, and we're still working with the licensor at the time. Was like, what are we going to call this thing? So originally we were looking at calling it Kit or some derivative of that, and then they, eventually we landed on where we did, but. Yes. So that, but also we were like, how can we? They were like, well, can we even use phrases? Like, what can we do? So we had to create the sound effect ourselves, recreate it. We had to record lines ourselves. So we couldn't use any old old recordings.
Yeah, so, there's a part with the voice where at first I was listening, it was like going, "Is it the original guy?" Then halfway through, I'm like, it's a different guy. It's definitely a different.
No, there's a guy. Yeah, actually, one of our electronic engineers. And I, those are sometimes things happen where you're like, he was doing me a favor. Steve Unruh was the guy who recorded it. And I was like, hey, do you think you could record this? Because your voice sounds like you could probably do it. And he's like, I think I could, and as long as I get a sample after it's done or whatever, sure, deal. I like to personally, when it comes to recordings, I like to be involved a little bit more, like listen to the recording session so I can add little input, because I have a voice in my head, like what the way I think it should sound, and sometimes you also hear just impromptu things, like when you're doing a recording session, like somebody will just say something random, you're like, oh, I didn't think of that. That's a great line. Can you say that, but say it with a little bit differently, so I wish I didn't get a chance to do that with this one, or there probably would have been some extra lines that were recorded. I was playing. I wrote a script, and I was like, "Here's some lines. I think that'll add up to about the time we have to fit on the chip." But in my mind, I was planning on sitting down with him and like going through the recording and like adding some input and maybe coming up with some phrases. But no, he just was like, I just banged it out at home over the weekend. Here it is. I'm like, oh, okay. You're doing me a favor. I don't really think that I can, ask for an extra favor on top of that. So, okay. Well, thanks, Steve.
Very good.
It's been a really popular one, that one. I mean, I guess it's interesting how some of these collaborative projects come about, and like, where's the decision in terms of like, okay, we're going to work with this brand, or does it just kind of get handed to you?
From a collab standpoint, we want to, first of all, we want to make sure that whatever we're doing still resonates with Transformer fans.
Yeah.
So we would like to have some nostalgia to whatever it is. I think the ideal, like if you're making like a soup or whatever, the ideal soup recipe would be you have like two really strong fan audiences that you're able to like bring together or cross-pollinate that maybe wouldn't have normally happened that way. So maybe you can start introducing Transformers to Turtles fans that may or may not have been into Transformers, and vice versa, right?
That makes sense.
I think that's where both licensing parties would feel most comfortable, right? And then you want to make sure that also you're not doing anything that like ticks anybody off, kind of it needs to be the right balance. And then if the secret sauce is like, okay, if there's some new entertainment or there's an anniversary that can like create some kind of additional buzz, then that adds like the icing on the cake, kind of, so that there's something you can leverage and talk to, the fans and retailers about, like, hey, it happens to be the 40th anniversary of Transformers and Turtles. Wow.
Yeah, that's cool.
The party van, like, boom.
Perfect.
And everybody's like, oh, love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are when it's an easy get. I love Knight Rider, but there's just because it's from the 80s. I mean, I'm a child of the 80s, but
we all
just
are,
because it's from the 80s doesn't mean that everything should be done.
I was going to ask
know.
if there were any that you would like to see. I mean, the one I see people mention is like the A-Team and things like this.
A-Team van.
So we definitely have a list. We definitely have a list of things, right? And sometimes things on the list also go because, like, we already have relationships with certain licensors. So sometimes it's like them coming to us, and that's even great. Like, sometimes a bit, because these crossovers have been the collabs have been so successful, that now we have people just coming to us saying, hey, would you do this?
That's cool.
And wow. So that's happening now. But sometimes it's also like, hey, we already have a relationship with a Universal, or we have a relationship with Disney, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So you start looking at those things. Now, again, being an 80s fan, there's certain properties that I would go like, that, again, there's challenges to a lot of these, and I'm just going to throw out some names, but it doesn't mean that we're doing them.
Yeah, well,
it's just these are just like these are just things that are like, oh, if I was going to make something, this would be what I would possibly like, but doesn't mean that it can happen, because there's licensing contracts that have to be dealt with and all that stuff. But like Akira, the Akira motorcycle,
wow,
like that would be amazing. That would be like probably my number one if I could, if we could figure out a way to make that happen. But there's challenges to a lot of things. I've always loved the space battleship Yamato.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Star Blazers. That was like I grew up, and that was eating breakfast before running off to school, like watching that on TV. So that would be something. But again, that's just me. Like, I don't know, like, how much that would resonate with anybody else.
The Akira bike.
The Akira bike. Bike.
There's never been a satisfying toy of it. It just never have made one for some reason.
Yeah, maybe there will be one soon, Liam. You don't know. So.
Yeah, well, I can't say whether things are happening or not happening. I'm just saying, like, I'm just saying I'm a fan of certain things. So but
I get that.
My sway doesn't go that far all the time.
Which is your favorite one that you've done so far of the collabs?
Wow. That's tough, because they're all different. Like, the Knight Rider one is cool because it does have electronics in it, right? Yeah. So, and it's that's really fun. But I still love the Turtles. Being able to, like, hey, it's got 4 different heads, so you can swap them out. But then people are still buying 4, because they want to stand them all up together at the same time. So that's another, like, if you can find out, again, I'll say, like, back to the Star Wars, that's another, like, ingredient into the soup that can really make it good, is if you can find ways to make things that are like troop builders that or inspire repeat purchase. Yeah. Like, that's just like, that's icing on top of the cake as well. So, like, doing multiple versions of Clone Troopers or whatever, like, hey, I have to have a whole battalion, or whatever.
I mean, the collabs so far have been, it's kind of been funny, because when it started, obviously it was like Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, Top Gun, and then there were a few curveballs with stuff like X-Men and kind of Jurassic Park.
I didn't work on that. Was the X. So I think some of the X, because there was, after the Star Wars line originally happened, then it was like, well, why don't we do some Marvel stuff?
Right.
I think that's where that kind of came from.
Okay.
But I think some things are, again, I think this was one of the challenges, again, with, like, the Star Wars even items, is like, how do you take a character that's not really robotic in essence and try to make it feel robotic, but not creepy or weird, but still recognizable to some extent. So Knight Rider item, like, hey, is it kind of inspired by, a certain actor? Maybe, but not exactly.
I appreciate the blue thighs for the jeans.
There you go. Like, you gotta go with the 80s look. He's got blue jeans on.
And the communicator watch is a touch of absolute inspired genius. So.
Yeah. So those are the little touches. And sometimes it's like, that's where you get the extra joy in your job. Is like if you can find little ways to do those little fun little bits and pieces. For sure. So the little comm link,
And there have been some curveballs as well, like some G1 toys that have been redecoed, for example the Tonkinator that was done. I don't know if that was you were involved with that one at all.
Yeah, that was. I did work on that. I didn't even know that actually even ended up coming out. Like sometimes, with some lines, some items. Literally, like a marketer or somebody will come to you and go like, hey, we're looking to pitch an item to whatever retailer. Right. Do you have any ideas? And I'm like, well, what's the target? Like, I need a little something to go by here. Like, who's your target audience? Some, whatever it is, they give you a little bit of, I'm like, okay, well, I mean, we have all these just Constructicons, like whatever, like can we redeco them and like, and we make a Tonka thing. Oh, I don't know. Okay, take a stab at it. So you like literally like I'm in a meeting while I'm in a Teams call, I'm like coloring up something like, okay, here, I got it done. And like just like totally don't even think about it.
Right.
And you find out, oh yeah, we sold it in. I'm like, what? Like literally, I wasn't really thinking. Like, this was just for like our discussion here.
Yeah.
So things like that do happen.
Is that how stuff like the I don't know if you know the J Balvintron Soundwave comes about as well? Because that was an exclusive, I think, for an app.
Yeah, I didn't work on that one. I can't remember if that was Mark or Evan, but it was probably Mark because he's into like graffiti art and stuff like that. Yeah. So I can't remember if it was him or not, but I think so. But yeah, that was kind of like, oh, this would be a really cool. You got a popular. You're trying to get new audiences, try to introduce new create new fans. That was kind of the impetus behind collabs. How can we grow the business, or how can we reach new markets? Mm-hmm. And then hopefully the idea is like you find something that's really cool. They buy it because they love whatever it is, and then they find that they love Transformers.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally.
That's kind of the idea behind it.
It's an interesting one from my collection as well. When people come in and see my collection, they'll either pick out a original like G1 toy that they had as a kid, whether it's like Cup or Optimus Prime or whatever. But if they're a little bit younger, they will see one of the collab toys and be like, is that the DeLorean from Back to the Future? Is that a Transformer? And then they had no idea. And then they're off on a mission to try and find that as well. And, because these are obviously big brands in themselves, so the Ghostbusters and all that kind of stuff. But absolutely, I've got plenty of friends that have just come into that and they've got one Transformer, but it is the Ghostbusters Ecto 1, for example. So
So that's exactly, and then we wrestle with like, how many to your release of certain things, because you don't want to oversaturate a market as well with items, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you don't call the number right, you can leave a bad taste in fans' mouths, or you can leave a bad taste in a retailer, and and that you don't want to do anything that's going to keep you from being able to do the next thing.
Yeah.
But with some of those things, like the Ghostbusters one, like, Target or, whoever, some of the retailers come back to us like, hey, that thing is still selling. And we're still hearing that there's now new fans, or because there's a new movie, can we re-release it? And we're like, so then it's like the discussion, like, really, we've already sold this many of it, how much more do you really think we can sell? Yeah. And I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt our future sales.
Yeah.
So it's not just, sometimes people think, oh, you're just trying to make a quick buck, but no, like literally we we have discussions about those things. Like, don't screw it up. Try not, at least try not to screw it up.
Because I guess there is a bit of good faith with all of it as well, isn't there? And,
exactly.
That makes sense. I did want to ask as well about the G.I. Joe items, because you said obviously that you've worked on the 3 after Megatron, which I have to say I am a huge fan of. I think they're brilliant, but they're quite different in a number of ways to kind of classic Transformers fare. And obviously the thing with them is that they're like basically 1-to-1 with the classic G.I. Joe vehicles that they just happen to transform. And I'm just really fascinated how that came about. I believe, or I've heard anecdotally, that there may have been a design idea to have them be smaller and kind of generation scaled at one point, but I don't know if that's true.
Well, like I said, those started before I came on to the team. So I don't know that I'm not familiar with that story particularly, but I think what we found really resonates is if you can create you can take an iconic Joe vehicle and also pair it with a 3 3/4 inch figure.
Yeah.
Because then you have this, again, you have that, you're crossing the streams of like, you have core Transformer fans that are going to want it, but now because it's a vehicle and you're including an exclusive figure that you can't get anywhere else that's on a vintage retro style card, well, I have to get that. And then I have to get more than one probably because I want to take it out of the package, and then I want to have it in vehicle mode and I want to have it in robot mode, so again, that's the special sauce, like where everything comes together. If you can find that right balance and you can make multiple audiences happy, then it becomes successful.
Yeah.
So So I worked on the Bumblebee one and on the All Striker.
Yeah.
And the one that came with Sergeant, was that the one? Which one came with Sergeant Slaughter?
That's the Triple T.
Triple T.
Triple T.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Name of our podcast.
It's true. Actually.
Exactly.
Coincidentally.
So those are the 3 that I worked on.
And I did hear, because obviously there was a lot of debate about the Ore Striker, because it's kind of like a buggy because it was made into Bumblebee. I guess I was wondering about some of the character choices with these, because there's a lot of debate online about it, about which characters are chosen. I actually quite like it as Bumblebee. A lot of people kind of wanted it maybe as Beachcomber or something like that. You mentioned earlier
that could still happen.
Well, that's interesting in itself. So that's interesting in itself. I guess there must be an element of like choosing the popular characters for this kind of stuff.
So again, like I said, sometimes it comes down to some of the collabs, we don't necessarily know what the retail channel is.
Yes.
For some of them. So sometimes, depending on the retail channel, that can drive things a certain way. So if you're going to be at mass market, like at a Target, they're going to be more comfortable in knowing that it's a recognizable character.
Right. That makes total sense.
So that's where you get the, make it Bumblebee, but also because, Bumblebee from the Bumblebee movie, or, he did scan, the military vehicle or whatever, So, there's some kind of like story that you can kind of weave that kind of makes sense. But there may be some parts that were tooled with that one to be able to make another version.
Originally, I may have heard
at
that.
some date,
Interesting.
Because that's the other thing. Like, if you can be strategic about being able to plan ahead with things, and go like, "Hey, can we get 2 bites of the apple here?"
Yeah,
and again, making sure that you're doing it in the right cadence, and you're not, again, you don't want to anybody off, so to speak. Like, oh, I just bought this, now you're making me buy it again. Like, you don't want to do that. But if it's if things can be done in a meaningful way where you can also be tooling efficient, and be smart about things, you can plan ahead and go like, hey, we could put in another head, we could put in another chest, and just go ahead and tool these parts. Yeah. Shut off those cavities in the mold. We don't have to tool it again in the future. It's already done.
Yeah.
We just have to open up those cavities on the tool and then rerun it at some other date, and you can do other things.
I mean, this is pretty much standard practice now for a lot of molds, isn't it?
Yeah. I think, again, if you can have that much foresight, yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you can always squeeze those things in there, because there is, you don't want to arbitrarily just make a mold larger just to fit some other parts in it, because you are paying for the steel and the stuff. So there is a cost associated with it, but if you can do it with enough foresight, and it makes sense. Then I know Lenny Panzica, who works on a lot of our G.I. Joe characters. When he's doing any of the G.I. Joe characters, he's always planning like, hey, if I make these legs, and I do this torso, and I do this other figure over here, I can then mix all the pieces together and make this other character over here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, but you have to have that knowledge, and you have to have the foresight to do that. And that's where I was saying that's kind of why I'd asked to even start working in the collab arena to begin with, was to be able to get more knowledge and insight.
It seems to be working out. I mean, just to finish on the G.I. Joe ones, just quickly, because I am interested. Obviously, some repaints may happen. That's fascinating by itself, which I'm very excited for. Are there any, because you mentioned you grew up with new G.I. Joe, what have you, are there particular projects that you'd like to work on there, or particular vehicles? Because I'm guessing some of them must be tbe too large for
the
what
flag.
You're trying to, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The flag
Well,
is the obvious
again,
one.
like that's that'd be awesome. But I mean, we have a list of certain things, but again, it has to also work with, because we have the G.I. Joe business as well. It has to work for both of our teams.
Right.
And the channel has to be right, and both businesses have to make sense to be able to do it. It's still licensed, but it's, even though it's Hasbro owned and operated, it still has to make sense to some extent.
Yeah.
And we have minimum quantities that we have to still make sure we hit, on things. So
yeah, of course.
Right. So you can't just go, oh, well, let's make 10,000 of these or whatever,
Yeah, no, sure. Well, hopefully they do well all the same.
Yeah. So that was on that particular one. That was something that originally was planned, or let's say maybe it was originally planned to be something else, and then it became Moldy.
Right. Okay. Got you. That's
have our suspicions with that one.
Yeah. I think we can read between the lines there. That's cool.
With the other collabs, before you said something about sometimes now licensees come to you and ask it. Is that how the Stranger Things one came about? Because that's always the one that seems to stand slightly separately to everything else, where it's the most surprising one.
Sometimes, and again, sometimes I think that does happen. And one of the persons who's working at Netflix, I used to work with, and he used to report to me, and now he's the licensing person. So at Netflix, he's like, hey, he just like calls me. He's like, hey, can you do this? Can you make it happen? Whatever. I'm like, I'll ask him around and see.
Yeah.
And then, Netflix is a great partner, and if we can also make each other happy and hey, maybe you can do a new show for us and whatever. Like, I don't know. Those kind of deals happen, right? And you can't say that doesn't happen, but that's happening at a higher level.
Yeah.
Where like, okay, fine. Sometimes some of those things happen just so that it makes other deals easier to make happen, I guess, hopefully.
And with something like Stranger Things, it's one of the biggest shows on the planet, isn't it? So that brings eyes again to Transformers from a new crowd and something like that.
Yeah, and that was, I think that was some of the inspiration there as well. I hope that it continues to be a successful, property, so we can continue to do more stuff with them, since they're doing more shows coming up, right?
New series.
Interesting that some of those are new toolings as well, new molds, like the Stranger Things.
So
toy.
sometimes we look at hey, is there, from just is there a way that we can partial something and do something to make it still unique and make it special?
Yeah.
But other times you find you're like, you know what, really to do it justice, you do need to spend the money on tooling, and just start from scratch. That was one where I had looked at several different vehicles or partials, and we're just like, yeah, it doesn't really work. And then you also have again, like when you start doing things, so it's like it's in the show, but it's also a VW or whatever. And then we have a relationship with VW. Okay, so are we not making it a licensed vehicle as well?
Yeah.
So like for the kids line, like for Rise of the Beast, I was like, okay, well, we decided that we would save the licensed one for the studio series, and we would do the kid one. We would make it a non-licensed version.
The Porsche, yeah. Interesting. That was a whole thing online anyway, because of course there's been a lot of conversation, let's say, about Porsche licenses and this kind of stuff, in the last 20 years.
So Porsche, VW, whatever, or whether it's Chrysler, or whatever all the different relationships we have with doing all these different vehicle lines. So, and sometimes we end up doing it because you're like, okay, we want to keep the relationship healthy and in a good place. Even though you're like, I know it's going to cost us more money to do this, but for the longevity and the health of the relationship business, sometimes you do those things just for the long, because you're looking down the future. You're not looking at the immediate.
That makes total sense. So my absolute dream, and I throw this out. I know this is not necessarily your thing, but I throw this out to anybody that I can at Hasbro, just because I'm hoping that it might become a reality.
Welcome to Sixo's pitch meeting.
Exactly. This is my one thing. So it is like a revision of like alternators and Vinyl Tech and everything from back in the day, like 124 licensed cars, that kind of thing. I just think that was like an Aaron Archer thing, but like a real moment in time, for Transformers, and I'd absolutely love to see something like that again. But again, I just throw it out there as a mere suggestion, as it were. So
are you saying doing licensed little mini vehicles? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, back in the day, it was like not full size, but like 1 to 24 cars. So quite sizable. But I think stuff like Agent Knight and things like that kind of goes quite a way towards
and that was already. Yeah. That actually one was where we were like, that was a discussion. Honestly, was to what's the right scale for that one, and trying to pick a true scale, or getting close to a true scale as possible, but still also being able to put electronics in it. So those are, sometimes you have discussions that kind of like, well, if we do this, then that means this can't happen. But sometimes things work out. You can do more than one thing at a time.
Yeah.
So,
and of course, Brian, there are so many other questions that we wanted to ask you as well. Conscious of time, I think we had sort of said that you might be up for coming back on another time at some point.
I am definitely. This has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed chatting.
Brilliant.
That's fantastic. So, I mean, we have obviously been so grateful to have you on. Your time and your knowledge and everything is absolutely invaluable. And to the idea of you coming back and chatting more, we'd absolutely love to talk about Earthspark and Transformers 1 and whatever else is going on. That would be amazing.
Rise of the Beast. There's so much to talk about still.
Yeah, it would be cool.
So much.
That'd be amazing.
Kenner, Batman.
Everybody go out and still buy your TF1 toys.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Oh, definitely.
Totally.
Been enjoying them quite a bit actually in this house, I can tell you. So that'd be great. But listen, for today, thank you so much, honestly.
Yeah,
and,
thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
We very much look forward to having you on again very soon.
It's been nice meeting all of you, and I look forward to chatting with you again in the near future.
Brilliant stuff.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, that was Brian, and fair to say, chaps, he was a fountain of knowledge, wasn't he?
That was amazing. That was so cool.
Brilliant.
What a guy.
Absolutely incredible. oh man, this guy was just so lovely and so knowledgeable. And obviously he's been around and seen it all, but like there is so much more to talk about. We could have talked about Star Wars and Batman instead, but
we
will. That's the thing. Can I just say, I really want to explain to everyone that's listening as well, the funniest thing about doing this recording was Liam and watching his little child energy just vibrating out of him when he was trying to get a word in, and then realized at one point he was on mute and didn't get it was like the excitement, everything was going. It was brilliant. It was so lovely. You were just like in your element. It was the best.
I do love that you've just said that Liam has little child energy.
That was all right. Yeah. Wee child energy, you know.
It's fair. I mean, I like to think I've got average height child energy, but
it's the vibe I'm getting at, not the height thing, right? You're all right.
It's not going away anytime soon.
There's like so many things he's worked on, and it's so like he would have been at like Kenner, the transition to proper Hasbro, like all of those toy lines, the history behind it, the change in toy technology, so many of the things that we've loved over the years that you don't realize that would have come through those kind of areas, wouldn't they?
Yeah. It's absolutely true.
It's brilliant. Yeah, and it was really what I loved about the fact that he worked on Star Wars and he worked on Transformers, and then the fact that he's now come into that collab part of it as well. It's so serendipitous, isn't it? It's just perfect. It's like, really
the mention of the Akira bike just got me because when before we started recording, like it was the one singular note that I had made for myself was casually try to drop into the Akira bike as a potential collab. And then he mentioned it himself, and I was like, I don't even have to do anything.
There was on my part, there was a little bit after we stopped the pod there, after we finished recording, we ended up chatting with him a bit longer, didn't we? And I took every opportunity to be like, do Transformers and Mask. Bring back Mask.
Yeah, you weren't very subtle.
Yeah.
It was good.
No, it was not subtle. He seemed excited about it,
he
though.
Did,
so you never know. You never know. But yeah, I thought I'd get more in about Mask.
Quite right.
As much as I could. So, but yeah, I agree with you, Jason. I think what's fascinating about his career is that so much of what he's done in the past makes him the perfect person to do what he's doing now, so where he's worked on like collab stuff like Star Wars and Transformers in the past, now he's doing the new collab stuff. It's just perfect. Where he's done sort of a lot of the like kid stuff and helped to develop stuff like Rescue Bots, it makes him the perfect person to be doing stuff like Earthspark and whatever else now. It all kind of syncs up so nicely, and obviously as you maybe heard, everybody, we're absolutely looking forward to having him back on as well. And I was just thrilled at the idea that he's happy to do that.
3, 4, 6 parts, whatever, man.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think he realizes that he's signed up to a monthly podcast now, but
he's the 4th host now. He'll be the 4th host. But the story he's telling about stuff like the Transformers, Star Wars crossovers, I hadn't even thought of that. And the second he brought it up, I felt like, man, we could do an whole episode talking about that. There's so much that he touched on, and you're just like, gosh, this guy has a real profound impact on the brand and toys in general, in a way that, he deserves the credit for all of it.
I have to admit, though, there was, I didn't say the story during the chat with Brian, but I don't know if I've ever told you guys this. I might have done when we were at TFN, but famously, my ex-wife Selena bought me the Death Star Darth Vader.
You've told us this. You returned it, yeah.
I did. I sent it back because I didn't do collabs. I didn't cross the streams at that time.
Don't tell him that, man.
And I now feel even worse.
Oh wow!
Because not only did I offend my wife at the time,
somebody got you a gift. And you took it back?
That's what I did. I don't want to send it back. It's terrible.
What did you do? Ask for the receipt?
She probably knew me well enough to know that it might go back. I don't know. But I feel even worse now.
Wow.
And it's like, how bad was that, But I just didn't. It wasn't my vibe. It wasn't my vibe.
But Sixo, we know Jason very well. He's like the nicest, friendliest on earth. I would not have him pegged as the sort of person who rejects a gift like that. Like, take it back. Give me the money.
This is not what I wanted. It's a nice gift.
Wow.
From that day on, she never bought me Transformers again. Quite rightly,
Rightly so, I think.
I know, it's awful, isn't it?
Jason
I feel terrible. Sorry, Selena. I say sorry to her all the time about that. It's awful.
Bad vibes, Jason. bad vibes, Jace.
I know, so
Whoa.
bad. Anyway, sorry, Brian,
You
as
got you
well.
with your little child energy and him with his big hater vibes, honestly.
I know, there we go.
I remember getting the X-Wing for the first time because it's always an X-Wing. Always have to buy an X-Wing from every toy line. And seeing that and being like, this is incredible. Two things crossing over that I love. And never think it, because like now it's so commonplace. It's like you can get anything with anything. Then you were like, how is this going to work? Well, which one is the dominant brand? And then you're like thinking in those terms, like which toy is it? You know what I mean? It's like, is it a Transformer or is it a Star Wars toy and the other one? You know, I mean, like it's which line is it for? And it's kind of crazy. And I remember my brother having the Millennium Falcon, and that's the one I think that has the GPS problems. I think that's one of the reasons why.
Oh, that totally
when you
shatters.
said that's infamous. I thought that's what you were going to say.
No, I stopped myself. I thought, should I mention the GPS? And then I was like, no,
don't be that
dick move. Do you know what I mean? To be like, do you know this toy breaks? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I thought this, doesn't need that.
It would have been. There's so much more to chat about as well. Like the fact that he worked on Rise of the Beasts and he was talking about the licensing. And
this is hopefully, what we're going to have him on again for, and the part 2 of however many, in the story of Brian and Triple Takeover. Yeah, exactly. But hopefully, we are going to have him back on again, and we're going to talk a lot more of the kind of kid lines, like Earthspark and the movie lines, like Transformers 1 especially, and then some stuff that might be coming up soon that we don't know about, but he's kind of hinted that there might be some more stuff on the horizon. So we'd look forward to seeing what that is. So as and when he's able to talk about it.
I can't wait. That guy was an absolute joy of a guest. He was so nice and so gracious with his time.
Yeah.
Man, I could have just picked his brain for hours and stuff.
Absolutely.
Like, so many incredible stories, and like the little offhand mentions of working with Takara, and just like that's not even man, just real incredible journey that guy's had. And the fact he had the prototype for the Star Wars Transformer in the room, and I could see him looking across, and in my head I'm like going, please pick it up, show us this.
Go and get it. Yeah.
I saw Sixo's eyes flicker at the mention of iguanas.
I know.
I was like, what? Do you know what I mean? That's incredible. What of all the things to use, to make a TIE fighter Darth Vader?
I love that kit bashing. Brilliant.
That's something we haven't really spoke about, isn't it? The Transformers Star Wars crossover.
We never have.
That's completely popped it back into my brain. We should talk about that in a future episode, because whole interesting side talk.
I might not be my usual vibes.
Yeah, that's why we have to do it. We have to get Dark Jason on here, Radio Dark Jason.
I'm going to turn up with I'll need to shave actually. So good Jace has a beard and mustache, but bad Jace, clean shaven
with a polo neck.
Like
Jason, but you'll end up buying a lot of these toys. I think.
No,
I think.
Yeah, you'll reappraise them. You'll reappraise them.
Yeah, they're such good toys, man. Great toys.
Okay, for another time.
They make for good presents as well, I bet.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure, Ooh.
I am.
Yeah.
I'd love it if someone bought me a Star Wars Transformer. That would be awesome. I'd be like thrilled with that. But
it's funny because when they announced the new one, the Mandalorian one, like it just popped this nostalgia for it, like. And it's funny, like when you said to him, like the circles come, it's all come full circle. It's kind of incredible how that worked out. And like I think that the Mandalorian looks amazing. I think it looks brilliant. I love that.
And it looks like it would work with the old ones in a weird way.
Yeah.
And there's something we often talk about, and I think this is something that occurred to me in that moment of like having that realization that he'd worked on both, was that we often talk about Takara Tomy and the fact that they have such longevity of, employees and that they have designers that have worked on, like Koji Nono that worked on the original train bots and now works on the Masterpiece train bots, for example, that kind of stuff where actually designers get to work on projects, new versions that they've worked on the original versions or whatever it may be, And I always think that's incredible. But then the idea that you've got someone like Brian who worked on the original Star Wars Transformers and now is doing another one, or has done another one. I think that's so cool, honestly.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I love that when that happens.
Yeah.
So,
super.
Absolutely
good guy.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, as we said, we will be getting Brian back on for another episode.
Can't wait.
Too long. So if there are things that you might like us to talk to them about, then hit us up and let us know. We'd absolutely love the suggestions and whatever else. And very much looking forward to that one. But in the meantime, if you want to get more chat like this and plenty of other stuff going on, fair to say you want to get on our Patreon, isn't it, lads? That's the place to be. It's popping. Absolutely popping on there.
Absolutely.
Pop it like it's hot. Pop it like it's hot.
Exactly. So there are 5 glorious tiers of stuff on there. Everything from early access to new episodes like this up to a week early. And then you get access to our Discord, of course, various tiers of Discord on there, which is very exciting.
Minisodes. It's all about the minis, which are not mini at all. They're long.
Yeah. They're really not mini, are they? We shouldn't have called them minisodes.
About an hour, some of them.
Not with you two around, no.
Us? What are you on about?
Titans Returns is always very mini and on time.
That's because you've not returned any of those toys, Jason. You've got no stories to tell.
Jason, this is the part where we're supposed to sell all the Patreon here. My one is just really short. You get very little value for money out of mine.
Absolute
Jason,
value.
This is not the right way to do this.
It's peak, the best content, done in a nugget.
Get mine done real quick.
Yeah.
Got some toys to return, mate. Yeah. Anyway, yes, we do have minisodes and we do have mini-series at different tiers. And, these are all things that you want. If you've run out of our public content, then absolutely go and get yourselves on our Patreon because there's so much on there. Loads of additional recordings.
What have we talked about recently on there? We did a Skybound 13, which
we've done Skybound. We've done IDW.
Thoughts on?
Dark Cybertron crossover. We've done... what was your latest Tatman? You did...
Thunderbirds.
Thunderbirds, of course it was.
That one was FAB.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, they're super cool. Thunderbirds. So cool.
Don't you start.
I'm not going to start again, don't worry. Very cool franchise.
What was the Titans Return one we did, Jason?
It was over in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's over in 15 seconds, wasn't it?
Yeah, so quick.
I can't remember who it was.
Bite-sized returns.
Wait, I know this. I can work this out if I go to my recently deleted.
It was Wolfwire.
Oh,
it was, yeah.
He was a goodie.
Weird Wolf,
Wolfwire.
Well, he's a bad.
Yeah, that was a really good one.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah. We've done loads of good. We did a mini-sode on asymmetrical transformers.
Yeah.
That was really good fun.
Yeah,
that was definitely a lot.
We had a lot of thoughts on Skybound 13, which are well worth your time.
Yeah.
Have you read 14 yet?
I
have read 14.
Don't say anything.
Okay, yeah.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that one as well next time.
Ooh, yeah. Say on that one
I need
well.
to read it.
So,
that's this
and
week's
we did a mini-sode on the Trainbots, Masterpiece Trainbots. We did a mini-sode on Blaster and the cassettes not so long ago. That was really good fun. We did one on Shockwave, the G1 Shockwave toy, and all the various kind of licensed iterations of that from different companies. That was great as well. So honestly, it's all happening on there. You want to go and check all of that out at patreon.com/Triple Takeover and be part of the gang. I think it's fair to say. But as well, there is another couple of little perks which are worth mentioning because, first of all, they get to ask us some questions, don't they, Jason?
They do, yeah. We have 2 questions this week, guys. So let's start off with a question from Josh Bell, who is on our Patreon, obviously. And
that guy is a legend.
He's great, isn't he? He's lovely.
He's such a nice guy. Such a nice guy.
Foul language.
That does deserve the F-bomb.
No, I'll be beeped out, don't worry. But he's such a level of legend that I felt it deserved it.
No, it's very true. It's a good question as well, actually.
Who is it?
Josh, don't listen to him. He's got his cheeky trousers on.
He's great.
Hi guys, got a few questions for the pod. This is only one question though, admittedly. With the new comics toys doing the unthinkable and delivering Flame and Zaron, who would you like to see next, and from what existing mold? So sorry, I slightly distracted you there. So yeah, go Liam.
That piano guy from Target 2006.
Tusks.
Tusks.
What?
Tusks. He's called Tusks.
Is that his name?
His name is Tusks.
Turns into a mammoth.
I thought his name would have been like Keys or something like that.
Tinkles.
Piano
Ivory.
I don't know, yeah.
Although
Tusks is, because it's ivory. And
yeah, there you go. I just got that now. Oh, look at me. I'm on it.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I did not make that connection.
Good choice.
Well,
there you go.
that guy.
Give
us that guy.
And then get your SS86 Optimus Prime to play him.
Oh, like the leaked photo.
Like the little toy reveal.
That's a good niche reference.
Yeah, that is good.
Although that was based on a Daniel Warren Johnson piece of artwork. Interestingly, that toy reveal leak. They
I didn't know that part of the story. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I think Daniel had already drawn the picture of Optimus playing the piano.
Refception, we'll call it.
Yes, exactly.
References within references.
I know, it's good meta.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. Especially if Hasbro now do an official piano transformer, then you'd really be onto something.
They got to.
So.
Well, we've got Brian's
Call him
number
Piano
now.
Man. Call it Elton.
Elton,
That's true.
Mine would be Rack and Ruin, very simply. Like that would be actually the one. So, but like a classic, Marvel UK Rack and Ruin. I know there's the Cyberverse one, which has got the kind of homage with the faces and everything. That's cool. But like classic old school Rack and Ruin, I've got no idea what figure you'd base that off. I don't think
I was going to say the mold from that. Yeah, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Actually,
I have the Cyberverse one. I suppose you could retool that, get it a bit closer, but I think it's one that would need its own. Yeah, but you could probably do it as like a like the weaponizery sort of things where.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Like Reflector, where you just do one part that you can plug together. Just take the arms off.
That's a great idea. Yeah, that would work perfectly. Something like that. Yeah, you could make Rack or Ruin, couldn't you? Because then you could take the arm off and just have the one.
Yeah,
dude,
exactly.
Or put a little
that'd be fun.
Like bar in between them and have Rack.
That's what I mean. They could get away with just doing a single butt, and then as a thing, you could buy two and just plug it in. It's straight, simple.
Interesting.
Yeah. Very
I'd
cool.
definitely be up for that.
Good choice. Love it.
What about you, Jason?
Classic Jason mode.
Does it already exist?
Because did he say with the new comics doing them think about who would you like to see next? All right, well, okay, that implies one, doesn't it? But I'm going to go three because I want hook, line, and sinker because they're my favorites.
All right,
okay, and they come as a team. But also, I was looking at the molds, and I actually think if you look at animated, you could use like Lockdown for the kind of base of one of them, Bulkhead as well because big chunky boy, and then. I don't know. The other one, I've not really thought this through. Oil Slick, maybe, but it kind of like, Oh no, it was a Shockwave.
You would use the old.
So I'd use those.
You would use the old animated toys.
Yeah, as a base
those toys back.
for hook, line, and sinker because they kind of lend themselves a little bit. Like the horned helmety bits going on and all this kind of stuff. And
so you'd use the original animated molds.
Yes, the OG molds. Yeah,
you'd get a lot of fans. Back in, like you get a lot of the animated fans back in, like Hook, Line, and Sinker as well. So,
they would be modified though. I missed that. Sorry, I was too busy thinking about how they'd modify these. Yeah,
it's all right, Jason. Listen back, you'll hear it then.
I love it. Good stuff. Right, please make all those, Hasbro, because we love you. Second question, this time from James Turnham as well, who we also love. Hey, folks.
Also a lovely man.
No F-bomb there, though. Questions for the pod, as requested.
It's not a grading system. It's not like just because I don't F-bomb it that, that there's any less love there,
Yeah, we love all
there is. That's exactly what's happening, guys.
I just felt it in the moment. That was it,
Listen to him, James. Hey, folks. Question for the pod, as requested. One, which also implies there was more than one, but anyway. You produce a lot of entertaining content about Transformers and occasionally other toy lines too. But what, if any, content...
this guy.
Do you like
guy
to consume?
Gets it. That is like... That's my line.
He's on brand. He's on brand, isn't he? What, if any, content do you like to consume about our favourite robot friends, Sixo?
Well, I'm currently quite enjoying Mr. Furman's podcast, which is a really great listen, which we talked about with Simon last time, actually. So that's been really good. I do like various Transformers reviewers that I watch. I'm very partial to an MGO review, which I think I have mentioned before. To be fair, MGO is pretty much my go-to source of transforming instructions nowadays, like often even more than like the official instructions themselves. I'll just sort of forego that and be like, is there an MGO vid? Yeah, there is. Cool. Because certainly trying to transform some stuff without MGO is interesting nowadays. So do like a Thew video as well. Obviously, he's always entertaining. Quite a big fan of Jobby the Hong as well. and his style. There's lots of YouTubers and stuff that I just think do incredible work. Honestly, for me, otherwise, there's just online, like a lot of the artwork and things like that is shared. I think is amazing. There's so much that like such a wonderful art community, like on Twitter and now kind of emerging on Blue Sky as well, which is really great to see. And that to me is wonderful, and I really enjoy like sharing a lot of that as well where possible. And so yeah, that would be off the top of my head anyway. That would be kind of my first thought. So
yeah, it's all good ones. Liam, what about you?
So is this specifically about podcasts and stuff?
No, it's anything. Any other kind of Transformers content or toy lines that you consume. So like that, you've got tons. You've got like that computer game one, don't you? That you talk about as well.
Yeah. I read lots of different comics. Currently enjoying Batman 89, all the Transformers comics. I read and watch everything, all the good stuff. But if it just as on the Transformers podcast stuff, like I think over the last 20 years, I've listened to pretty much them all. Like the Radio Free Cybertron guys are all seem pretty nice. Transmissions, that was good.
Yeah.
Aaron Archer's Transformers podcast.
Oh, that's really
excellent.
good. Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah, and so is Simon Furman's. But what am I watching at the minute? The Penguin. Currently into that. I know that's not robot related, but everyone should be watching that. It's brilliant.
It's good.
Still the void the Sopranos left in my soul for years.
Yeah, I want to see it.
But Transformers related, it's probably the Aaron Archer one is the one I still look forward to the most when it does occasionally pop up. But I think that's basically if there's any Transformers comics or cartoons, chances are I've either read them and seen them. So yeah.
I've been reading a lot of Batman comics recently.
I saw that. I quite enjoying the chat, rediscovering like with the discussion recently about the Dark Knight 2.
Yeah.
And,
I haven't read that since the badly drawn comics.
It's so bad.
It's so bad.
Frank Miller at his absolute worst and most self-indulgent.
I know. It was not good.
And in our little chat, a couple of our friends, a couple of our mates, well, Fancy Dan was trying to be
contrarian Dan. You knew exactly where he was going to go. We love you, Dan.
It was so funny. It was so funny the way he was being like, no, I think this was like really. What was he trying to say? That the art was like in and of itself. Do you know what I mean? Like it was quite expressive and whatever else, and trying to sort of like find a way to make it sound not as utterly crap.
Yeah, he was talking about really.
It's so bad.
It was nuanced.
I remember when that comic. I remember that comic was coming out, and I think the third issue came out. I went to a comic shop, picked it up, and I saw a mate of mine who was also picking it up, and we were both talking about it, and we both came to the conclusion that neither of us was enjoying it, but we felt because it's like The Dark Knight Returns is a seminal comic, and it's like one of the most important comic books I think because of the tone it set with Batman, which then set a tone with comics in general.
Yes.
But it feels like all these years later, they have taken all the wrong lessons from that book and not necessarily the meaning behind the book of the time.
I completely agree with that. Yes, the book in itself, in isolation, The Dark Knight Returns, is incredible. I think that when it then bleeds into when your main universe Batman is modeled on that, then that's when you kind of run into issues. Do you know what I mean? And it's like that, but hey ho, that is kind of what it is. But yeah, the sequel book is honestly woeful.
There's a third one. There's a third one which is better than the second one, but it's not really Frank Miller. His name's attached to it, but not really.
It's just not what I would have wanted. And considering I've never read it before, which is so weird because I loved The Dark Knight Returns years ago, and then for some reason just never read the sequel. And actually, finally sitting down to do it, I'm just like, oh my god, it really is as bad as people say, like worse even. You know?
I've always just imagined it doesn't exist since they're
I think that's,
I come across it every now and again when I'm like poking through my comics and stuff because I still read all Batman books and stuff. So and then every now and again I come across that and I'm like, no, it still looks horrible. DK2, terrible.
There's no real redeeming quality to it. That's the thing. It's quite incomprehensible at times. Fair to say.
Dark Knight Returns though still holds up. Like I reread it recently. It was like
good.
It's still great on its own, and a lot of the stuff that's like we wouldn't have had Batman 1989 without Dark Knight Returns, and that which in itself has then set the tone for other Batman stuff. And great.
Yeah, true.
I read a lot of comics, Jason.
And I just, funnily enough, I just picked up all my comics from my ex-wife's house today, and they're upstairs now, and I was rifling through them, which is why I ended up having another one of those turn-to-page adventures from the 80s to be able to read my son tonight, which was awesome. and I'm rediscovering all my comics.
There's a really good one I recommend at the moment called Batman the Brave and the Bold, which is where they've put Batman back in blue and grey and given him the blue Y fronts again. And I appreciate that. But he's got the Batman Returns logo, or the Batman 89 logo on his chest. And it's like him and Superman teaming up separately, sort of outside of the main comics universe. So it's still kind of fun. It's got the kids in it.
That's cool.
That's good. Good times.
Very cool. Maybe we could do an episode at some point about, random non-Transformers comics. Who knows?
Yes.
I think that's a good idea.
God, yes, let's do that.
That would be, it's
a good idea. I like that idea.
Would people actually be up for hearing that?
Vote now. No one's voting.
Yeah. Where are they voting? What are we like?
What's wrong with this system? It's not working.
Yeah, exactly.
Shout at your speaker, everyone.
We should do it on a Batman Year One, because that's my favorite all-time.
Arkham Asylum.
All-time
Arkham Asylum. That's what I want to do.
Oh, also great. It's Grant Morrison.
Yeah, it's so good.
That is really good. Yeah, a really good book.
I've
been really enjoying a lot of the stuff by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. I think all of those books are just phenomenal, honestly.
The Long Halloween and Dark Detective and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Dark Victory, I think, is
Dark
really
Victory,
good as well.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. So really, really good.
Have you watched, just to keep this conversation going, have you watched the Cape Crusader, the recent Batman cartoon?
No.
I've seen bits of it. I've seen clips, but no, I haven't sat down and watched it.
It's excellent, and it's really sort of inspired by the Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale stuff. You get that Long Halloween sort of vibe from it.
Yeah, I'd enjoy that then. So that's cool. It's fun. It's funny because Long Halloween I've always thought is brilliant, but that's another book that I think people kind of take the wrong learning from in a way, because you often get this kind of like this attempt to make Batman really grounded the whole time, and kind of set him in the world of mobsters and whatever else. And people always refer to the Long Halloween in that regard. But the whole point of the Long Halloween is that actually these, the freaky side of Gotham is rising. Do you know what I mean?
Calendar Man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It is. They often take the wrong lessons and they're like, it's Batman versus the mob. But you're like, the Long Halloween isn't Batman versus the mob. Part of it is Batman versus the mob.
Part of it is about the mob.
And then you're throwing in all the crazy.
Exactly. And then you've got all of the weirder side, which is coming out. And the whole point is that the very nature of Batman, it's sort of the escalation of it, as it were. And it's, I don't know, it feels like some of the films never quite get to that part. But hey, that's a whole other conversation, isn't it?
Watch the Penguin. There's a lot of that. Silvio Falcone is the main villain-ish. So
look forward to it. Yeah. Okay, and another perk.
I've not done mine yet. I've not done my channels.
Go on. Sorry.
Because I've literally been giving you 5 minutes of screen time for your content. Because I'm looking at my YouTube subs. Sixo TF, that's someone that I go to for Transformers content.
That's nice.
It's true, Toy box soapbox.
He's trying to reel it back from the revelation earlier of him giving a gift back, and now he's like, I am still lovely, really.
Yeah. Look at him, nice.
Well, I go and look at your content as well, Liam. And Maz's as well. I love his content. Thew, definitely. Hasbro Pulse, those guys.
Good.
Back in the day, PR as well.
Said it correctly. Well done.
Thank you. Stuff that is not Transformers related, but is on YouTube, which I recommend, is Good Restore. If you like a bit of airbrushing and just pretty fixing of broken toys, faked broken toys. If you're a nerd with trains, Everett Junction is well worth a watch.
Oh, Liam, you'll be right on that, mate.
Ooh. Yeah.
Choo-choo.
Choo-choo. And Dr. Faust, if you want your a bit more painting fun as well. That's my go-tos. Oh, and there's a podcast called Triple Takeover.
I was about to say, didn't you go to prison? But that's a different doctor.
That's a very different one. Exactly.
Yeah.
I know. And a bunch of artists like Casey Collar, guy called Nick Roach. I look at all their content as well. Furman, Jeff Senior, those guys.
A
big part of it. It's funny actually, because a big part of it for me is the artwork, like you said, Sixo. I really like just getting single still images, and I had the absolute joy of going collecting tons of the artwork that I'd bought both from friends and at TFN that I've not seen in 4 years, something like that. And I've got some pretty cool stuff. I've got a Hook, Line and Sinker, a piece of artwork, which is just awesome, pretty cool. So yeah,
that's cool.
All that kind of good stuff.
Very nice, great stuff.
Wholesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's fair to say that another perk of our Patreon is that we normally announce the new patrons that have signed up as well. But I think we'll do a bit of a rollover this time, and we'll bring those guys in next time, and we'll make a bit more of a fanfare, because we have had a few signups recently. So we'll do a bit more of a kind of roll call and everything next time. We'll get to all of that.
Sounds good.
But yeah, do get on our Patreon. Lots of this stuff. And, you can get much more of us talking and whatever else. That is at patreon.com/Triple Takeover. So it's all on there. But otherwise, gents, what else do we need to tell them? Liam, have you got any Redbubble news for us this time?
Redbubble still exists, and you can find us at redbubble.com/Triple Takeover /people/explore. But also, if you enjoyed this episode, which you must have, then, let us know on social media. And you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook,
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
That's the place to be now, isn't it? Blue Sky.
Blue Sky. Everyone's on Blue Sky, so go there.
Everyone's leaving Twitter and going to Blue Sky. Yeah.
So guys, Jason, where can you be found, Jason?
Well, funnily enough, now that I've left Twitter, you can find me at JSwags.
Have you left Twitter? Have you gone?
I have. So I've not deleted everything. I don't know if I will do that. But I am no longer posting, and I've not opened it in a while. I'm on Blue Sky because I don't know how you guys are finding it, but it is literally just Twitter of old, and it's really lovely content. God, I've got a pile of photos to share with everybody, and it's like having nice conversations with everybody. It's really lovely, actually.
Wow! So they develop a new social media platform, and Jason finds his photo scrapbook. Gets his holiday snaps out.
So, there we go. Just getting all those pictures back out of my G1 Soundwave.
Jason is the man who would have had a slideshow, of his holiday.
No, I would not.
In the old days. Would have rolled out the slides. Let me show you this.
An overly complicated video. That's what I would have had. That I would have laboured over.
I can well imagine it. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be really bad.
Yes, you should definitely go follow Jason. Lovely, wholesome vibes. And Sixo, come on then. Let's get this out of the way.
Well, I'm also on social media, and far be it for me to, trample on anyone else's territory. But suffice it to say, I'm on social media, and you should look me up. I'm on Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I've probably mentioned some others I've forgotten some others that I'm also
Bebo,
on as well.
Are you on there? MySpace?
I'm not on Bebo, not on MySpace. Might be on Threads, I think.
Threads? Yeah.
You are on Threads. He's telling me to join Threads because of you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, at Sixotf.
It's a threat.
It felt quite threatening from Metro, I'll be honest. Yeah.
I am Toybot Soapbox. Anywhere there's an app.
Boom.
Wonderful.
TM. Registered.
So well.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's mine.
Well, that brings us to a close. And as I said earlier, thank you so much to Brian Parrish from Hasbro for all of his time and enthusiasm and everything. Can't wait to have him back on again. That is going to be so much fun. We're already thinking of questions to ask him. So I hope he knows what he's let himself in for. But in the meantime, we'll catch you for the next episode.
Little child energy.